trying to figure out how to make all these foreground moving parts as realistic as possible by myself at home with predominantly using Blender. I mean, that was a big draw to me. Hi guys, welcome back. I'm Freddy from Freddy Makes a Movie, and today I'm going to be talking about this shot right here. See, the last video I published, I got such an incredible reception. People were flooding with comments and praising the shot, giving a lot of feedback. Thank you for the feedback, and tons of suggestions of other shots. So thank you for contributing so much. This went well beyond what I thought was even possible. I ended up picking this shot for two reasons. One is because there's a personal attachment to the shot, because I happen to be one of those people that was at the theater when the movie came out. I was at the right age. This movie was made for me and people my age, because we were 11-year-old together with Harry. We were all going to Hogwarts for our first time. It was magical. It was such an incredible experience. So that's one reason. Second point is because this is a very difficult shot. From a CG standpoint, I don't have such a large crew. I don't have the camera rig. I don't have any of that stuff. So obviously I'm not going to do this live action at home, which means that the only other way I can do it is by remaking in CG. There was a lot that I had to learn. I'm really not the same person I was when I started this journey. And who knows, maybe you're gonna be a different person also by the end of this video. Before moving forward and showing you my process, I just need to take one moment because I really wanted to thank all the artists that put time and energy into creating the assets that I have used for this video. Most of the things that you're going to see on screen are happening because of the work of these people. It's someone's work been put out there available for you. This is truly a gift. So thank you. And I do hope that the final product does justice to your work. With that being said, let's move forward. Let's have some fun. Hopefully you get to learn something. So the castle, I knew that it was going to be the most important thing right away. So I spent a lot of time trying to figure out which model to get. And then I ended up landing on this one because the model is actually extremely detailed. And then second, because the artist was so open and very happy to share this model. I thought it would be such a fun thing to do, just bring it into my shot and do my best to really showcase how great this model is. The thing about working on these shots for me is always important to move around. So I don't always lock myself on one thing. I try to focus on the lighting. Sometimes I focus on moving the shaping of the castle. And it's also making the job more interesting for me, because otherwise I can easily see myself bugging into one task and then forgetting the meaning of life. So once I get to the overall shaping, I even start putting fog around just so I can really get a sense of how achievable everything is really in the first place, but also, just to see how things look all together. The matte painting part was really also another vital thing that I try to comp right away, because that's the part that really brings everything together. So I really like to get in there as soon as possible, just so I can really start to see the whole image coming together. And that's the part where I usually start to tweak the colors, just so they match closer to the original shot. But even then, the original shot, depending on where you look at it, it keeps changing colors. So just get to a point where you're mostly happy with it and then stay consistent. That's the most important thing. So once I got to a point where I felt like I had everything I needed and I felt confident with what I had at this stage, then I was ready to move on to the next problem to solve, which was going to be the lake. The lake, I had a couple of ideas on how to tackle it. This is the stage where I'm making sure that the camera movement flows correctly, the boats are moving naturally, they do their nice little rocking, which is barely perceptible in the end, but it's that detail that makes the shot feel more alive. And then once that was sorted out, then I would move into the water simulation part. It took me a little longer than I probably should have to figure out that any real simulation I was doing was predominantly a waste of time. When you start asking yourself, is there a simpler way to do this? And the answer is yes, then that is the better answer. So I ended up reverting back to the simple dynamic paint system that Blender has built in. And that's all I really needed. After I brought all these little elements together, I finally made it to the point where I felt couldn't push further until I moved onto the stage that I struggled with the most, which was the student. The first model I wanted to make of the student was actually going to be a friend of mine who's a huge fan of Harry Potter. So I thought to myself, it'll be also such a fun thing to make him a part of this project. So I ended up taking a couple of photos of him because I was curious to try the Keen Tools face builder rather than photo scans. I also saw that they had a feature in Blender that integrates it immediately with Character Creator, which is what I was mostly leaning towards using. And it turned out to be exactly what I was hoping it would be. It was so simple. With the click of a button, sends it to Character Creator, where you then conform the base mesh to Character Creator's base mesh. And then you have now a model that works beautifully inside Character Creator's ecosystem, which is great. As far as like the base model itself, it didn't take me more than half a day, which is unreal to me. But now that I had the base mesh, I had to figure out the pose, because I always knew that I was going to replace Agrid, or, you know, just being a character that's doing this both business every day. So like he's just taking a nap. The pose I chose originally, I don't think it would have worked for the camera angle looking downward, because we were looking at the face upside down. And after all the work I've been through, and, you know, asking my friend, getting him all excited about this, you know, just being able to put him at an angle where you can barely recognize him didn't really feel right. So I thought, you know, I'll just put him laying flat on the boat. But after the pose was sorted out, it was time to figure out the last piece of the puzzle as far as the characters goes, which was the cloth simulation. I was always curious to try Marvelous Designer because I saw how great the simulations looked in it. The cloths looked incredible. And also because I happened to have bought the robe working with Marvelous Designer. So I really didn't have too many options. It was just a matter of making sure that the character matched the initial pose, and then giving 30 frames so that the simulation would follow the base animation and then sort of like have the cloth rest on the model. The simulation was almost immediately working right away every single time. If there was ever something off, it was just simple to fix it by just like grabbing it, moving it around. It was so cool. It was so much fun. I actually really enjoyed that. And then once it was done, you just export the Alembic into Blender. In Blender, you just apply the shaders, which by themselves were already perfect. I cannot even tell you the joy I felt when I saw my first character in my scene, because that was such a monumental achievement. This was just as big to me as seeing the army of Uruk-hai when I did that a couple months ago, just because it was always such an unachievable thing, and today it's so accessible. The people at Real Illusion made an incredible tool, and I'm really excited to jump back into it and play around more with what I can do with it. Now that everything came together this way, well, I was now able to move on to the next stage, which was adding the lanterns. The lanterns, I felt like they needed to be more visibly, you know, swaying around. I needed for the animations to be ready so that they would dictate how the pole was moving, so that would define the movement of the lantern itself. But after a really extensive trial and error, frustrating research and all that, I finally made it into a stage where the lanterns were moving and they weren't over moving or flying over off screen. They were there, they were swinging and responding correctly. What was really good about it is that when I did the test and seeing everything coming together so nicely, that lantern moving with that light, it just made everything so much cooler. So I'm really happy that my experiment paid off, because I think in the long run makes the shot a little more interesting than just having these simple fixed lights. So that was my definitive step before I was confident enough to jump into the final stage. For the rendering itself, I knew from the beginning that the shot had to be split into foreground and background. For one, it's because I always like to have more control in comp, but also because the castle itself, for various reasons, happened to be a little bit noisier than I intended it to be. Even with the denoise, you start to get that splotchy sort of denoise artifact that you get. And so I thought at the end of the day, what really matters is the animation in the foreground, and anything in the background is kind of still. It's really matte painting. So I ended up just making one super large render of the castle, really, really large actually. And then in comp, I use the position to points node, which sort of helps me find where things are located in 3D space. And then I put the card matching that space, project, and you basically get your free sort of castle animation like that, which is great. This is a 700 plus frames. So I'm glad that in a way I get to save some time from rendering the castle and just focus entirely on rendering the characters in the foreground. You know, you've seen the work in progress so far. You've seen how everything is looking, and I mean, this is how the castle in the end ends up looking. Let me know what you think. well, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, when I saw this with the music for the first time, I jumped out of my seat. It was so exciting to see this coming together like this. I mean, all these months of figuring out the little pieces and finally everything coming together like that, it's beyond. When you're making these shots, you're not thinking exactly at the end product. You're just going one piece at a time, and then somehow magically everything comes together, and that's so satisfying. To me, I will always have a sour taste of, you know, not ever being able to match it to the original for many reasons, obviously. So, you know, and by itself, the shot can probably be better. You know, there's parts where feel more realistic than others, but the good outweighs the bad to me. I do hope that there was something for you to take away from this video, and if not, because I understand there were a couple of months condensed into a couple of minutes, so I would understand if I skipped over a couple of concepts that you want to hear more about. Let me know in the comments what you want to have me explore more for you guys. But also, don't stop sending suggestions for shots, because that's where this video comes from. So keep them coming. I really look forward to seeing your suggestions and see what's next. If you're liking also this content and you want to see more, don't forget, like and subscribe. That's always helpful. I look forward to hearing your thoughts on this video, and you know, until the next video, I'll be seeing you around. Ciao for now.